Thank you very much. Settle down, take seats. Journalists, if they want to interview people, they must go outside and interview people outside. Good evening, sir. Now is the time. Welcome first. Now is the time to tell us about yourself. Short summary of your work experience, but also tell us if you have an issue on the disclosure of conflict of interest.
Thank you, Chair. My name's Deenadaylen Konar. I'm better known as Len Konar, and I have a number of academic qualifications. I studied at the University of Durban Westville, which was a hotbed of politics where various members of parliament, past and present, have completed their degrees. I completed a bachelor's degree and a postgraduate diploma in accounting. I qualified as a chartered accountant. I received an American Fulbright scholarship. I went to the USA and completed a Master's of Accounting Science with distinction. I came back to South Africa and I was one of the youngest professors in the country. At the age of 27, 28, I was a professor, and I spent the next 15 years at the University of Durban Westville, which was seriously political in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. I left the university in 1995, and I joined the Independent Development Trust, where I spent the next 6 years building schools, clinics, helping the poorest of the poor. And thereafter, I went into a corporate career, serving on boards of companies, and in the public as well as the private sector. And in 1998, Chair, I became a member of the King Committee on Corporate Governance, and I've been there for the past 19 years, and I'm one of the 11 task team members that wrote the King 4 report. So for the past 19 years, I've been involved in governance. I am an examiner at 3 different universities where I participate. At the University of Pretoria's Gordon Institute of Business Science, I'm an examiner on the MBA and PhD programs, at Wits University on the MBA programs, and I teach on the corporate education program of Duke University. I have presented since the launch of King 4 on the 1st of November last year, 63 sessions on the King Report on Governance. I'm considered an expert on the Companies Act, on the Public Finance Management Act, supply chain management, and I have a global qualification in risk management. So I understand numbers, being a chartered accountant, and being the first black chartered accountant in South Africa to earn a doctorate in accounting. So I got that many, many years ago.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Honorable Van Dam.
Thank you very much, Dr. Konar, for making yourself available. You've got a really, really impressive CV. We've had, I think you're the 4th CA now that's appeared before the committee. What unique skill will you bring to the board if we appoint you?
Chair, Honourable Member, I bring particularly unique skills in the sense that I've run businesses. I've run big companies. I'm the chairman of Exaro Mining, the largest empowered black-owned company on the JSE. 52% of our shares are owned by black professionals. So I bring to the board a skill in finance, a skill in governance. Now, if I look at the SABC, and it is trying to seek funding from the fiscus, when you look at the revenues of approximately 10 billion, the advertising revenues of about 7.7 billion, licensing revenue of about 975 million. So, and the other sources of income, the use of the facilities and so on, how can we revisit the business model for the SABC to become self-sufficient from a funding point of view? So I will bring a particular skill from a governance point of view, from risk, and ensuring that we adhere to the Broadcasting Act, the Amendment Act of 2002, understand corporate governance, pay attention to the Public Finance Management Act because you've had irregular expenditure of 5-6 billion, and then take seriously the findings that former public protector released a report in February 2014, the 24-page report by Thuli Madonsela, and those recommendations, we must make them stick and embed them within the organization.
You touched on something I'm very interested in about a self-sustaining SABC. How would you improve the SABC's funding model so that it can self-sustain?
Through the chair, very simply put, if you look at the other channels that broadcast So you look at DSTV or you look at Mnet. And sport is extremely popular in South Africa. And if you look at the mandate of the SABC and the Broadcast Amendment Act, we've both a commercial as well as a public broadcaster thrust. But we are practicing a duality of functions and not looking at it separately. So there's a broadcast element as well as the commercial element. So how can we commercialize it? We've got to make the channel to be a channel that one would visit, the channel that one would utilize, the channel that one would access, so that you could measure the success as far as advertising revenues are concerned. When you look at the revenue model and you see that advertising represents about 5.7 billion, can we not get that to the level of 7 or 7.5 by better programming, by looking at what can you offer as far as your audiences are concerned, as far as your advertisers are concerned? Can you get greater penetration? So through the chair, an important element, my suggestion, should I be selected to serve on the board, is to have a very serious induction session with the board of 12 together with the group CEO, the CFO and the COO, where you unpack the machinations as far as SABC is concerned. You need to look at the Broadcast Act, you need to understand the charter, and you need to implement those particular elements. And my plea would be, when one joins the board, is that we have a charter that every member of the board, a code of conduct that every member of the staff of the SABC will commit to. It'll be a place of pride where people want to be associated, they want to work, they're enthusiastic about a successful organization.
What's your opinion on the SABC's editorial policy, and how would you improve the SABC's editorial policy?
Through the chair, the editorial policy, if one looks at the Act, and the Act is quite clear that we should be impartial. But what has taken place in recent times, which emanated prior to the release of the Public Protector's report, is that there has been bias and there have been elements of capture, if one could call it that. And one needs to certainly engage with the staff, as well as a committee such as yourselves, as well as the Minister, that this is what is contained in the Act, the Constitution, the Public Finance Management Act, ICASA requirements. So we need to amalgamate all of that from an independence, from an impartiality point of view.
Honorable Josie.
Thank you. Let's start with your education. When were you a student? Which years? Don't switch it off, just keep it on.
All right, Honourable Member, I was a university student from 1972 to 1977.
You mentioned earlier on that it was a Durbanistville, which was the hotbed of political activism. What was your political contribution?
Through the chair, I was actively involved. I became an academic in 1978 as a junior lecturer.
As a student, were you a student activist?
I was seriously involved, and we had Minister Roy Padiachi, we had Mo Sheikh, that were contemporaries of mine.
You are dropping names. I'm asking about you.
I was certainly involved as far as activism is concerned, and we were penalized in June of 1972, Chair.
Which movement did you belong to?
The student movement, the SRC.
And then, when did you get the Fulbright scholarship?
Through the chair, I received the Fulbright scholarship in 1980, so I spent 1980 and 81 I spent in the USA.
Was it not a CIA recruitment?
No, Chair, I applied and I graduated with distinction, and I came back.
Often they say Fulbright scholars are CIA recruits.
I am not...
What is your reaction to that?
No, I would reject
And
that.
then here it says you, a past board member and chairman of the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee of South African Parastatals, ESCOM, SABC. Have you been in the SABC board before?
Chair, I was a member of the SABC board 1989, 1993. It was seriously successful. I chaired the Risk Committee, the Audit Committee, the
1989?
1989 to 1993.
Under apartheid?
Under apartheid.
Who put you in the apartheid SABC board?
Chair, the SABC board in those days needed representatives from various communities. So if one looks at the Broadcast Act, it talks about religion, and if one looks at the 19 radio stations that are promoted by the SABC, one of them is Radio Lotus. And as far as
So
East
you would
Zulu-
understand my discomfort with a person who served under the apartheid SABC board wanting to be in our board in a post-apartheid South Africa. If you do, please explain what that discomfort might be and how you would handle it.
Chair, I have to apply my mind. When I join a board, I've got to apply my mind, and I hear the members' discomfort. Can we be an agent for change? And by serving on a board and by using my particular skill set, I was in a position to add value. So my contribution is to add value. And various
Does it
structures-
matter that such an institution that you are serving is at the forefront of communicating, justifying, and legitimizing a human rights violating, autocratic, racist government?
Chair, that is the honourable member's point of view. By us participating, either you are Madiba and you participate, or you ignore and you stand back. So I was invited to join the board, and did I make a meaningful contribution? It's been
You
appreciated.
were comfortable in being in a board of an apartheid SABC, and you think that is emulating Mandela?
Through the chair, I served on a board that had various representatives of various communities.
Okay,
in
that's
South
fine. Now,
Africa.
here it says you were a member of the board of various listed companies, Smirnoff International, Steinhoff International, SEPI, Old Mutual, Exaro, Alexander Forbes, and so on and so forth. And then later co-chaired Risk Committee of World Bank. One of the big influences that many people don't probe is capitalist influence, or in different ways, private business influence on the SABC board, that it too can influence what happens in the SABC. It can influence editorial decisions. What is your reaction to that? Have you been nominated by private capital or members of private capital to be on the board?
Through the chair, I've been nominated by an individual that is employed at the SABC. The reason for that, and I say it with great distinction, that I've served on the SABC investment committee of the pension fund for the last 15 years. When I joined the fund, its value was R1 billion. Today it's 12 billion. It's granted pensioners.
That's fine. My question is answered. The last one. I told you you have 5 minutes, so I have to do that. Now, I want to take you as the final question. Do you think it's fair for you to expect me, to expect the many black South Africans who suffered, who've got family members that lost their lives? Do you think it's fair for us to appoint you in the SABC board when you don't see a problem in having served in the board of a regime that caused them so much suffering? Is it fair that you expect us to do so? Should a person like that be in the board, and don't you really see the ethical dilemma of that?
Through the chair, I've served on the United Nations Ethics Panel. I believe that I'm eminently qualified to serve on the board. We've all gone through change.
My good sir, do you not see the problem? Do you expect us? You don't see a problem with serving in an SABC board under apartheid. I'm asking you, do you expect us to put a person who doesn't see a problem with serving on a board of apartheid SABC, a propaganda machinery of the apartheid regime? Do you expect us to put such a person in the new democratic board?
Through the chair, that's your point of view, Chair. That's a particular member's point of view, and the honourable member is entitled to his opinion. I'm, through the chair, a change agent, so I've participated.
You will round up, but the time is up. He must just round up responding to the question. I'm saying finish answering the question.
Thank you. Chair, I am an agent of change. I mentor students. I run a practice that has 73% Africans that are employed within our business. So I'm an agent of change, and I've done this throughout my life. So there are various structures, and either you are a member and you can influence change, or you stand back and you let the status quo prevail. I believe that I've been in a position to add value through influencing outcomes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Konar. Honorable Madisha.
How are you, sir? I hope you're well.
Honourable Member, I am well, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm quite happy that you are here as a chartered accountant, etc., because we are dealing here with an institution that is actually corrupt. And there is no money there. And this belongs to the people of South Africa. Now, as a sequel to that, there is no, I must say, financial stability, and I'm sure you know that. What is it that you believe you can be able to do?
Chair, you are required to, in terms of the Public Finance Management Act, to prepare a medium-term economic framework. You've got to look at your strategic plan. So if one looks at the SABC, we have had a very damning report from the Auditor General as far as fruitless and irregular expenditure is concerned. So one needs to bring in disciplines within the organization. And I believe, very simply, Honourable Member, that you need 6 qualities within the SABC that needs to be part and parcel of the Charter. So we need the 6 things. One of them is integrity. So when we look at appointments and we look at the activities of the SABC, we need integrity. Secondly, we need competence. So you need to employ people that are competent, including the board. It needs to have people that are competent, that can do the job. You need responsibility. Individuals that take on tasks, including the board as well as the executive management, need to be responsible. They need to be accountable. So if things go wrong within the SABC, you cannot have a situation where people have been suspended for 2 or longer years and then receive golden handshakes. There needs to be transparency in all the activities, as you have seen with the press reporting on a regular basis on leaked emails and what is in the heart of an organization that does become public knowledge. And finally, you need fairness. So we need integrity, competence, responsibility, accountability, fairness, and transparency for the board as well as the SABC as an organization to succeed.
You're correct. Thank you very much, sir. I mean, what you have just said is in line with Section 13(4) of the Broadcasting Act. So what you have just said actually is written there. And I hope you then can be able to rise and say, we'll do 1, 2, 3 in the board to actualize that. But then here we have a problem. The political situation in the country, it may be normal, but then we are about 15 political parties inside Parliament. Some very big, some very small. We're all working together, etc. But then, what do we do when it goes to where you've got to govern as the board? There will be a minister from a particular political party who will push a particular direction. What do you do then?
Chair, we look at the Broadcasting Amendment Act and in particular look at the Charter of the Corporation. So Section 6 is pretty specific as far as what the board needs to do. And the board needs to have members that are sufficiently strong, Honourable Member, that can act independently and impartially. When you serve on a board, like you being a part of a family, you do what's in the best interest of the family. So the board needs to do what's in the best interest of the SABC. Do we want to collect revenue? Do we want a financially sustainable organization? Do we want to be a broadcaster that people wish to come and be employed by? Do we want to promote sport? Do we want to be a beacon of positivity in a land that looks quite desolate?
As I end, before he stops me, I mean the chairperson, yourself as an accountant, you have just spoken about sport. And you go and watch tonight, for example, You'll see kickboxing there. You'll see, people walking around, the beauty contests and so on and so on. It is not very many people who watch those kind of things. And as a result of that, a lot of money is lost. What do you think should be done, sir?
Mr. Madisha, the reality is similar to universities, and I've been an academic for the past 30 years. When you have a decline at the university, you've had various languages taught at universities, like Latin and Arabic. But when the demand drops through the chair, what do you do with those particular departments? You curtail it. So when you talk about kickboxing or cage boxing or dancing, if your audience numbers are limited, you'd have that on a very, very limited exhibition basis.
Thank you
so
very
it won't
much.
be popular.
Thank you very much, sir. Honorable Kalago, is it you? Honorable Sedi?
Mr. Kon, I see already you are serving on 5 other boards, and some of them are even international boards. How do you find yourself balancing these things if appointed?
Through the chair, I am a professional director of companies. So I do not have a full-time job. So I have an office and I have support staff, and we attend board meetings, we prepare, we teach, and we are well prepared for those meetings. My attendance record, by way of example, through the chair, I was on the board of the Reserve Bank under 4 different governors. For 23 years, I missed 1 meeting in 23 years. My father passed away, and his funeral was on the day of a board meeting. So my attendance record is close to 100% on the boards that I serve on, as well as the committees that I chair.
Some are starting to suggest that we must review the role of the executive directors in the board. What's your take on that?
Chair, we are quite specific as far as that aspect is concerned. And if you look at the principles in the King report, King 4 has got 17 principles. Everybody needs to be held to account. So we believe that the board should be evaluated, the committees should be evaluated, the chairperson should be evaluated, as well as the deputy chair and every member of the board. It needs to be a constructive exercise where they have particular weaknesses that you can assist them to improve on those weaknesses. But if you have perpetual absentees from the board, you need to exit those particular individuals. So I'm a very, very firm believer in regular evaluations conducted externally by experts that can help in constructively improving the participation of board members.
What's your understanding of the digital migration project, and what does it mean to the SABC?
We've been tackling the broadcasting, the terrestrial, and we've been looking at the penetration and whether or not there is affordability. So I believe in technology, I believe in migration, but it's got to be done on the basis of affordability. And the individuals that would be able to access what should largely be a public broadcast in a country that has a significant part of its population below the poverty datum line in a position to access. And you can use the broadcasting services as they do in India and other parts of the world as a seriously educational tool.
The last one, I'm sure you're aware that we are now appointing this board because the other one was dissolved. If appointed a board member, what is it that you can assist your colleagues in the board to do things differently to avoid another dissolution?
I think that's a very pertinent question. I said at the start, Chair, what's important is that you should have a cohesive board. It should be a collegial board. It should be respectful. So the 15 members on the board, the 3 executives, the group CEO, the COO, and the CFO, together with the 12 members of the board, need to sign a pledge that we are committed to the ethos as far as the SABC is concerned. This is the charter that we will follow. We agree to disagree, and you're not going to get a unanimous decision on many points, but you should get a consensus decision. So you wouldn't have factions on the board. You'll agree on the business plan, and you'll agree on the policies, because that's important, and how you execute those policies might regard from time to time and differences.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I'm satisfied.
Thank you. Did you talk about disclosure?
Chair, from a disclosure point of view, I'm unrelated to anybody that's influential at the SABC. but I do have two disclosures to make. One, I've served as an advisor and a member of the investment committee for the last 15 years at the SABC. And as I've shared earlier, the fund has done remarkably well. There have been no governance lapses. In fact, the SABC has benefited from our participation in that they've had.
Until when, Mr. Konar?
I'm currently a member of the investment committee, and I chair the audit committee of the investment committee, and I chair the audit committee of the medical fund of the SABC. The solvency at the SABC chair medical fund should be 25, it's closer to 80%. And the investment, the SABC pension fund chair is about a 12 billion rand fund. It has granted pensioners a compound increase on an annual basis in excess of an average of 10% per annum, as well as, Chair, it has paid out 13th checks. So we've done a remarkable job from a funding point of view of the SABC pension fund as well as the medical fund.
Thank you very much. Anything to ask from members as a question?
My plea to this august body of hardworking individuals at this late hour is very simply to appoint a board that is diverse, that is multi-skilled. You need to improve on the marketing side, you need strong governance, you need to populate the finance, and you need to understand technology. That's so important that your board does have those particular skill set represented on the board. And they also are alert to the social dynamics in the country, the political dynamics in the country. So my plea would be, whichever way the committee decides and the recommendations that are made to the president, that we have a board that one would take pride and say that they're doing a good job.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming. Travel safely.
Chair, we don't respond to comments.
No, I don't think, Mr.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. As I said, travel safely.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to the members for your interest.
Members, we have now come to an end of our interviews, and as I said, we'll have to reconverge again on Tuesday as early as 9:30. Is it? I hope communication is out for that we're meeting one time on Tuesday. So that we can deliberate on what we have been doing. And we hope it will be done within 1 to 2 hours, because we'll be doing some work over the weekend and Monday. Secondly, yesterday, members, we have written to Mr. Bauer and called him. He responded accepting, and for some reason he said he was expecting something like that when he was talking to the secretary, because of his problem as a permanent resident only. So he has accepted our decision, and we have also, as we're communicating with him, we also removed him from the MDDA list. So he won't be part of the MDDA as well. So he accepted everything. Other than that, members, thank you very much. You did a very good job. Sleep well.